As mentioned in my previous video, I said that I played through Luigi's Mansion 2. To elaborate, I not only got 100% in the single player mode, but in the multiplayer mode entitled ScareScraper. This is where the majority of my playtime was spent, I'd say around 50 hours or so. During that time, I learned many intricacies and techniques that basically made me a beast at the mode, especially when solo. A lot of that got thrown out of the window when this came out. Even from becoming a master at LM2 ScareScraper, I could tell that the general strategies needed to tackle this new ScareScraper were different, and a lot of the teammates I got grouped up with seemed to be fetuses with how incompetent they play. Or... oh my gosh. Therefore, I tried playing it solo, and man is it punishing by yourself. So, after some extensive playing, I've developed some strategies for this new ScareScraper for both solo and squad runs. Before I start, I do want to give a disclaimer. You should at least beat the final boss in story mode before you really dive into the ScareScraper. By doing this, you'll get comfortable with the basic game mechanics. Also, the final boss of ScareScraper actually spoils what story mode's final boss is, if you care about that sort of thing. So what is the ScareScraper? The closest comparison I can think of is a procedurally generated mini dungeon crawler. On each floor of the hotel, you're tasked with one of 4 objectives, and fulfilling the objective before time runs out grants you access to the next floor, with a slight increase to the difficulty with each floor. While running out of time or having a team wipe is game over, sending you down to floor 1. Like I said, every floor is procedurally generated, so no 2 runs are alike. This also means that, in order to be successful, having the correct strategies in mind is key, so let me talk about some of them. First off, use the map! It's off in the upper right hand corner, and pressing up on the plus control pad or D buttons expands it to fit the whole screen with a bit of opacity. These hollow rectangles are unlocked and safe doors, while solid rectangles are locked safe doors. I stress safe, as you may see more doors on the floor that the map doesn't show. A door that doesn't show up on the map is a trapped door, and will require another squad member to free you with a suction shot, or you'll just waste about half a minute, maybe even more, being completely useless. Again, only doors that are on the map are real. Oftentimes, it's better to cover as much ground as you can. This means even going into the closets and decks. This is a good idea because keys can spawn in these rooms, and oftentimes you need to unlock a door in order to access a room that has whatever element is required to fulfill the objective. Basically, locked doors can hold toads, ghosts, crows, or extra money, so do your best to cover as much ground as possible. Side note for this one, in a room marked as having a key, don't bother with using the dark light. The key only spawns in an already visible piece of furniture. Don't spend a lot of time combing through these rooms for power-ups or anything. Really, I just pop in to see if it has a key, check 1 or 2 things, and keep moving. And actually, that's another key tip. Keep moving, particularly when playing solo. The difficulty is the same regardless of the number of players, meaning a solo player has to play with a difficulty optimized for 4. It's hard, but it's possible. You might have noticed the timer in the top. In multiplayer with a full squad, this never really becomes an issue, but in single player, it's your biggest enemy. As some floors can become intricate and complex, checking furniture for timepieces is crucial. However, nothing drops timepieces until there's only about 3.5 minutes left. Only around this point should you actually try checking things for more time. Here's an oversight with playing this solo. Pausing doesn't actually pause the game like it did when doing LM2's ScareScraper solo, so keep this in mind if you're doing a run by yourself. You'll only be able to take a break in between floors. Sometimes, one of these things becomes haunted, and the way to defeat it might not be immediately obvious. To disarm it, suction shot, yank, dark light. Sometimes, you encounter these pressure plate rooms. These require all players to have both their Luigi and Gooigi on the plate in order to proceed. IMO, I like taking care of these as soon as possible if it comes up on a floor, especially in multiplayer, as it ties into my next tip. In multiplayer, I highly encourage everyone to split up. This lets you cover more ground in less time. Taking care of the pressure plate as soon as possible will let everyone do more of their own thing earlier, therefore allowing you to more quickly clear the floor. As with the locked doors, these most likely are blocking something relating to the floor's objective. With the boss floors, I recommend looking for the key ASAP. Don't bother all that much with looking for extra power-ups, unless you can clearly see that there's a treasure room somewhere. Also, there's a pressure plate in the boss room, so when someone grabs the key, run back to that room ASAP. For solo runs, try to mentally plan out a route as more and more of the floor is revealed on the map as you explore. Don't let your mind wander. This might sound dumb, but this has actually costed me a few solo runs, so in between floors, do whatever you need to do in order to clear your mind. Many times, I've gotten randos who aren't paying attention to the map to see if they're needed in a pressure plate room, or if they're the one with the key that is needed to fulfill the objective, therefore running down the clock. Please just pay attention, look at the map. Something that can absolutely tarnish an otherwise clean run: traps. These will prevent you from moving for a bit, and if you're playing single player and you don't bust out your Gooigi before you got trapped, you're dead meat for at least 20 to 30 seconds. I already touched on the trapdoors, but the bane of my existence are the rugs. When starting a new floor, I recommend running on the sides of the halls as you're scanning for where to go, or having Gooigi out as you can swap over to him if Luigi gets caught. This isn't as much of a deal when doing multiplayer, as a squad mate can rush over and help you out, but that does pull that teammate away from whatever it is that they were doing. A trap that can easily be avoided are the boo closets. If you see one of them, use the suction shot to disarm it. This is just a general tip for the game. When slamming ghosts, avoid mindlessly spamming A. If you instead time your A press right as the ghost hits the floor, there will be less of a delay before your next slam. This will let you get more slams in, therefore doing more damage. If you're playing with randos online, be sure to make use of the message buttons. These are some basic commands that can get you through a run, but ideally you use either the online app for voice chat or something like Discord if you're playing with friends. This will let you more effectively communicate what exactly your situation is, and more easily lets your team come up with on-the-fly decisions if it's needed for the situation. Another general game tip: the flashlight, suction shot, and dark light can all be used with the L and R buttons, as shown here. This allows your right thumb to be on the right stick more of the time, and this also lets you use the dark light device while spinning with the right stick, which is what I do to scan the room to see if there are any invisible ghosts. When it comes to the hammers, don't let the slam meter run out all the way. Let go of ZR before it runs dry, then start sucking again, as this will let you continue draining its health without having to stun it again. If there's an empty part of the map that looks like it's supposed to be a room, try shining the dark light all around and you should be able to find a door leading to the treasure room with every available temporary upgrade. Occasionally, a boo will play a trick on you and make your poltergust warp to a different part of the map, or cause a power surge! Obviously, if your vacuum gets warped, get it ASAP. But with the power surge, if you can still navigate with the lights out, I'd say don't bother with finding the breaker panel that can be found in the closet accessible from the hall. Oh yeah, sometimes there are CRT TVs that act as teleporters. Most of the time they aren't that useful, but once in a blue moon they've been critical for me completing a floor, so always keep in mind if they're useful taking your situation into account. There are a few objective-specific strats as well. You really only need to clear a room from ghosts if it's impeding your ability to bring a toad back to the teleporter, and you don't necessarily need to immediately bring a toad back to the porter. Essentially, if you want to risk it, you can just collect the whole squad before bringing them back to the CRT if you want to. Just keep in mind that if you bring a toad into a room that has ghosts, you have to clear it from the poltergeist in order to proceed, as toads seem to forget about the concept of doors the moment they see anything paranormal. Some ghost floors have a lot of smaller ghosts rather than normal-sized ones. While they're easier to get, they never drop any time, so if you get to a floor like this, be sure to check furniture for any time. If you're playing with a full squad of 4, you really have to comb through the floor, seeing as for whatever reason this is one of the few things that scales depending on the number of players. So make sure you check every nook and cranny. Outside of the money collecting floors, money literally serves no purpose outside of your score at the end of the floor. So unless you're supposed to be collecting money, don't bother with grabbing it. It'll only slow you down. With the final boss of ScareScraper, it's more or less a watered-down version of Story Mode's final boss, but do keep in mind that you can flash these statues in the corners for extra health if you need them. And that is just about the extent of my knowledge with ScareScraper. Now, even if you do employ all these tips and tricks and strategies, you may not always win just because of the nature of ScareScraper and also just human nerves. Heck, sometimes I forget some of these tips just in the moment because I don't have good brain. And that's okay. No one's perfect.